And before we start, a special thank you to some of our sponsors. Be sure to check out each sponsor's virtual booth in the virtual expo. All right, and the stage is yours. Take it away.
Thank you so much. So it was a couple months ago when we were planning out the Creative Summit, and my friend Steve Douglas goes, "You're not going to believe the experience I had this summer." And it turns into a whole thing about OWC and summer stories and his new friend, Vince. And I said, wow, we really need to talk about this at the Creative Summit. But before we get into all of this, I want to show a little piece that OWC put together about summer stories, if I can indulge everybody. And just so you know, we're all monitoring the chat, but if you've got questions for things as they go on, it'll be in the Q&A pod. I'm going to hit screen share. I'm going to share this video. If I can figure out how computers work, which I think I'm qualified to do some days, optimize, and let's, this should be visible, and let's play this.
I had about 2 weeks of sleepless nights as I was getting all kinds of emails about how we could not do this without any sort of solution. Whatever anybody else said, we were gonna make this thing happen for the kids, to be able to give the students a full experience of what it would be like to be in new media. About 4 or 5 weeks before the program started, Vince Vaughn reached out and he said, hey, I'll come in and I'll be a part of it. I was blown away. I was like, really? Is this happening? I found out he is not only interested in education, tremendously passionate about education.
I was always grateful for the project-based learning opportunities I had to learn about camera and storytelling. And so that really served me well later in life in my profession. When you actually are part of a project and you complete it, you have something to show and it gives you a different sense of accomplishment than someone evaluating your comprehension. But I didn't learn if I was just filling out a questionnaire. There's nothing quite like actually executing it and doing it. That's a very different experience in learning it. And also I think in building someone's self-esteem. Mr. Douglas has always done a terrific job here. I've been super impressed with the films that come out of here, the course and the class, and the opportunities that he provides. I really am just motivated and inspired by what he has done. And I thought, what a perfect learning pattern. Some theory and instruction, the ability to go put it to use, getting feedback, and the ability to watch others and learn their process and how did they solve the problem. So I really believe in that as just a basic learning tool.
With Vince Vaughn coming into Summer Stories, it was seamless. He was an actual teacher. Vince validated what I've been trying to do for the last 20 years, and that is to build a dynamic, personalized learning community focused on audience-based storytelling that is meaningful and life-changing. And that's exactly what we did.
I can't wait for you guys to get started, start learning techniques, start putting them to use. So tell your story, because it's important that you harness your own abilities to translate what you're thinking or what you're feeling. You guys have things to say, so be excited about that. And this is inspiring. We're gonna have so much fun learning from each other.
So I believe that this will fundamentally change education. This is the most dynamic way to be able to show and demonstrate student learning that I've ever seen. The kid wins because it gives them a chance to identify their story, and the student writes it, they record it with their phones, the device in their pocket, and then they can bring it into Final Cut Pro. They put it together very simply, and they get feedback. That's the beauty of the cycle. They move it from good to great, something they're proud of, something that the teacher can look at and go, yeah, they clearly got it. There's no faking that.
As a father of one of the students, what I like to see is she's willing to put herself out there. I like that she is supportive of other people's journeys and trying to fit in and learn. Being able to both advocate for the things that you believe in, as well as being able to hear and respect someone with a different point of view is going to be the true journey of life, regardless if you're in a film project or not. That in the pursuit of education currently, they're not getting those opportunities as obviously.
The students really benefited from having OWC come behind them and to be able to give them tools that work, that are intuitive. The Envoy Pro Electron was so essential, just to be able to transfer really large files that quickly to multiple different MacBook Pros. The Thunderbolt 3 dock was really, really helpful to be able to connect into the system that we were at and be able to present on their large screen The Thunder Bay 4, to be able to have one central place where all the students could take all of their work and be able to put it to one archive was amazing.
With technology and with this kind of support, it shows kids that they can actually apply something that they're learning. So they can start doing amazing things and go, wow, look what I've done, and wow, look what I'm going to do.
The highlight of my professional career, no doubt about it.
I've really learned that storytelling is a very important part to filmmaking.
Having everyone's input and collaboration is really helpful because there are ideas that you don't think of that they might.
I like getting compliments on my work by professional actors. Beat my mom to a compliment by a celebrity. It's a lot.
And I really enjoyed creating an environment and a culture for kids to get in the pool and to learn. You won't learn your potential without facing things that are challenging.
It shows you don't have to follow convention. All these things that are there at their fingertips can help them express themselves, and just all the opportunities there are around that.
How incredible would it be to be able to share this experience with kids in LA, kids in New York, kids all around the world, trying to get students to be able to create, think differently, to be able to take those next steps individually with the phone in their pocket, using incredibly intuitive apps like Final Cut Pro, and he totally agreed. And now we get to figure that out.
It's really fun. Like, I consider it school, but it's like fun.
This is not a chance that I get every day, and I'm very thankful that I got this opportunity.
I'll definitely be able to take what I've learned in this camp to the things I do in the future.
I'm so incredibly thankful that OWC has chosen us to be able to see what can happen going forward in education as things continue to expand, continue to democratize within storytelling. As an educator, you need brands that get that.
OWC, the speed to create, the capacity to dream.
Pretty cool. Really well done. That was awesome.
Oh, Jeff, we lost you.
You're just muted, Jeff.
I'm just muted,
There you
right?
go.
I'm supposed to know better than that. I keep myself muted out of it. Did you really call him in that video, Mr. Douglas? Did you really?
You did.
So bizarre.
Ah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start, Steve.
Yes. Yeah. No, and that was, yeah, it was absolutely incredible. And I'm so thankful just the way that OWC and their whole team told the story so well. It's phenomenal. And just to watch it, reflect on it now.
That was powerful. That was really well put together.
The OWC team does an amazing job, not only with their hardware, but also putting together stuff like this. It helps really forward education, but also forward the story. Steve, Summer Stories, what is it? I know it's in its 4th year. I know kids are doing this over the summer. Kind of can you give me a little bit of the inception of this?
Yeah, so this started, and a lot of you guys who are familiar with the Global Summit, you guys have heard this story a couple different times. We had a chance to be able to kind of fill people in, and I'll just give a little context to it. 4 years ago, Luke from Apple came to Chicago and he said, hey, we'd love to be able to democratize this, use an iPhone with Final Cut. What do you all think in Chicago? And so first year we had CPS, we had kids from the suburbs, from the city, all collaborate. It was incredible. And so since then, we just iterated and continue to grow. We take what works, just like in the storytelling process, made it better. And so we've done it over 4 years. We've engaged so many different kids. It's been amazing to see just the impact that that's had on their professional career. Year one, we had a group of 3 or 4 kids who are now have their own production company. They came in with the goal of, hey, we want to be able to do music videos. And here we are, high school kids. Within 8 months of them finishing the program, they had their own LLC. They were out doing it. They were flying to Atlanta. They're getting paid for their work. And that was because of the program. Not only the access there, Apple Music came through. Tim David did an amazing job of connecting us in with Juice WRLD. And so literally the kids were on stage like 2 days in. It was crazy. So amazing stuff. Yeah.
You need to indicate Tim David from Apple is involved in education because not everybody will know Tim's name.
Sorry.
It's okay.
They don't. He is, he's a pioneer. He's a guy to connect with, higher ed, as well as K-12. He is fantastic out of Orlando, but he will be on your doorstep if you just express any interest, and he will take you to where you need to be.
How long is this program? Is this 2 weeks? Is it a month?
Yeah, so we started with 6 weeks and juniors and seniors only. And again, we've iterated, we've found what works. And so we stay with juniors and seniors for the most part, because we find that
rising seniors particularly have a better sense of kind of where they want to go. The maturity level is there. And then we kind of expanded it from there to now where this past summer we had 5th grade all the way through, 30 somethings, which we found unique value in. Why? Because there's inherent mentorship. And so there were alumni coming back from previous summer stories to help out, which was one of the best dynamics, right? To see the collaboration that went on in that room, and it was just organic. Powerful. And so that's a big value in what we do is we want to create connections. We want to create a community that's based on the values of storytelling, the iteration and learning from what you do. And to have somebody who's your peer or just a little bit further down the road than you are is so incredibly powerful. And so that's what we did. You can see it in the video. We just gave them some different prompts. We were very strategic in that. Vince and I had some incredible conversations around pivoting and what do they need next and how can we take this idea. One of my favorite stories was Wednesday. Vince calls me at 7 a.m. And he's like, hey, I think we should do a continuity project. And I was like, tell me more. And so he's like, we did this when I was in high school at Lake Forest High School in telecom, and I think we should do it. We hashed it out for 45 minutes. And then literally Bailey and Mitch came, demoed it, which was incredible, and then rolled it out that morning. And it was a total success. And it was just so cool to be able to not only, just be able to collaborate with Vince, but Vince is a teacher. He's an educator. He thinks that way. And talk a little bit about that. Like you just...
I wanted to ask Steve. It's okay. I wanted to ask, you're there, you get a text and you get a text evidently from Vince. You got to be going, that's not who this is. 100%. Vince, what made you want to reach out? What made you want to get involved? Tell us what you saw in this program.
I had the fortune of meeting Steve back at an event for telecom, and I was just impressed where he had taken the program. You saw a bunch of really inspired, alert, engaged kids who were, making stories and having a blast. And I was really blown away not only by their work, but just their enthusiasm. And so I just respected him and what he was doing. And I just knew the lives he was touching. And kids were going on to film school, and there was an avenue for kids because of Steve and the culture he created. So I called him and just said, my daughter's of age and I love what you're doing. I want to be supportive of the program. So I did some things that were supportive prior to even, getting a hold of him on a personal level. And then we just started to play and have fun. I really respect his views on education and, the ways to approach it. So I wanted to participate, and we just had a great time. We had a lot of laughs. It was enjoyable. And, the most fun is to see the kids and what goes on afterwards, to see that door open and for them to be coming back with things. And look, these guys opened a production company. Other people did other things. It's the confidence. They're good at a skill. They're learning to do something that's different than, I took a test and someone thinks I did good. There's work to be shown. It's a great self-esteem builder.
Sure. We know Vince's background. Steve, can you tell us a little bit about your background? And I want to particularly, I know that you were going to go there anyway, but I want to hear you just talk a little bit about some of the media literacy education you have, because I think that's such an important factor today about the way we view the world, given that it's all coming to us digitally.
Yeah, you know what? I thought I did know his background. And then I realized right behind us is literally a homeschool setup. He literally homeschooled his kids and brought in education and made it personalized for his kids. And I had no idea, but he knew more about education, honestly, than I did, like some of these experts. And I'm like, tell me more. And it totally was a collaboration from there. But yeah, no, 20 years ago, I got a master's in media literacy. And so at that point, there were only 2 programs in the world, in the US that did it. I came from ESPN, a very rigid kind of storytelling kind of background, incredible experience there. But I wanted to be able to marry that with something more useful and more thoughtful. And so I kind of combined those 2 worlds. And so media literacy now, as we know, is becoming a really important part of our lives. And what media literacy simply is just thinking critically about media, how it works, and be able to deconstruct media so that then you can give people the skill sets of critical thinking, as well as creation, iteration, all those different elements to then be able to make really intentional media. So you're thinking about the audience. You're not thinking about just what I want, but you're really thinking about others. And that's where you can really create some valuable elements that you can have for forever. And it's really exciting because this is now kind of catching on in Illinois. It's the first state actually that has media literacy standards that are now going to be implemented next year. And so there is amazing opportunities to be able to move forward and to be able to do this.
That's fantastic. Vince, you've got to have some opinions here on media literacy, given that, the onslaught. You're sometimes in the eye of that hurricane. Anything you want to contribute here about this sort of literacy?
Yeah, I think for kids, there's something first that starts with storytelling and almost the monolith and Joseph Campbell and just the hero with 1,000 faces, understanding that a lot of these journeys are the same journey that we go on. So there's something connective about that. If someone's from a different background or a different place, you start to realize the human story is more similar than not, whether it's, Dorothy or Bilbo Baggins from those kind of tales, they're really the same story. So as you add technology and all the great things that are provided, it gives the kids a way to bring these stories to life, to visualize them and to create them. So I really like the fact that you're working both on the inner person and understanding of story, as well as getting, what a gift to get the aptitude, all the equipment stuff that you guys have provided for these kids, not just in Chicago, but I know you've done it many places throughout the world. You can't underestimate the power of someone getting permission to hold and edit and to do stuff that brings them a value, like they're a part of this. They're getting to use this equipment and they're feeling equal to it, and they're using it to tell and create. And there's just a magic that comes from that. And I really think it is from doing, from watching, from seeing other people, by trying stuff that people haven't tried, like just being in an environment where it's fun to use this stuff. It's cool to see what I can make it do, and kind of play around and see where it goes.
So the logical next question for me is, all right, I have a, kid who's about to go into 4th grade next year, 5th grade, or it's a high school kid. What's the experience like? They show up on day one, and can you just give me a little bit of the pattern, including some of the review?
Yeah, we get devices in their hands right away. Because to Vince's point, you've got to iterate. You've got to be able to do that. There's not a lot of talking. Yeah, we introduce each other because it's important to establish kind of who trust as well as kind of people's backgrounds. But yeah, no, they started making stuff, right? First day, they had mentors that were working with the kids so that they could kind of ease into that. And whatever level that they came into, we said, hey, you know what? It's not about making the perfect project. It never is. It really is about you going, experimenting, trying things, trying to lower the stakes and give them confidence to be creators. And that's such an important piece of it. So they just go out and build and create. And that's my big kind of takeaway as a dad, as an educator, is you just need to go out and just do as much as possible, because we all learn, right, from our mistakes. If you can learn to be resilient and have kind of that grit to be able to recognize that, you know what, we're not going to make perfect things all the time, but we learn from that process and we get feedback from others, and we can just kind of leave our things out in front instead of holding on to it, right? And we all struggle with that as professionals, no matter what you do. And so just going and incubating, being in that kind of atmosphere, but it starts day one, getting them out there, doing it. Give them a chance to review their work, to be able to get feedback, to get positive, constructive feedback. But then also, as you kind of see where they are, we ended up, each kid was creating 4 or 5, 6 projects over the 2 weeks. And so it wasn't just one, it was, day after day, you're right back into it, because it's so important to keep building on that momentum and that confidence.
So what we did was we started with the idea that all stories have a beginning, middle, and an end, set up, conflict resolution. So we gave them a device and said, tell me a 30-second story, nothing longer than 30 seconds. Can you do a setup, a conflict, and a resolution? And telling them nothing about the equipment. So just a oneer, almost, most of them were. Just to get it in their hand, they could push play, they could record. Then after that, we would evaluate the conflict. See, this was a good setup. Or could you have set that up in a way that was less obvious and hide your hand? The conflict, what about the resolve? And this would lead to conversations. Now they're seeing stories where they were all going, that I believe that. Sometimes they weren't, but the good news was we were moving on. Whatever happened in that story, we had our next project that we were going to do. And so when you isolate like the continuity project, you show the concept of continuity. You walk around a hall, you pick the person up on the other side. We had fun with it. You shoot me from the front, I put my hands on my head. You do it from behind, I put my hands on my head. What's the cutting point to make it look like it's happening just in real time? So go give me 4 cuts of continuity. Then you'd isolate different setups, 6 different setups of the same scene. Now, how do we cut those? So without going through all of them, these isolated building blocks were like wax on, wax off. They were getting to isolate these different techniques that all led to a larger 2-minute project. Now they were taking audio, framing, continuity, sound, and they were putting it all together. And the most important thing was all these were their ideas. They were willing to push the limits and go far because this was something they wanted to tell. And then by working with other kids, you learned what it was like to be supportive. Hey, this is her idea. I'm giving suggestions, but I'm going to do my best to help them see their vision. Now this is my vision. And so there was no power struggle because everyone had something they were in charge of. But one thing I'll say about a multi-age classroom, which was interesting, was the older kids were very empathetic and enjoyed working with younger kids. And the younger kids, we never had a behavioral problem. And I think part of that was they had, in this case, high school kids in the room, and they wanted to kind of level up. So it created a beautiful ecosystem for the program.
And then we had professionals in the room. So then those college kids who were in the top film schools in the world who were helping us out, they also had Vince Vaughn in the room, right? So they brought their A game.
Sure.
And so did, Patrick Jones came from LA, he's a professional cinematographer, broke it down. We also had other alums who literally shot behind the scenes. All the stuff that you saw there were created by the Beesons who are alums as well. So it was a total community effort. And it was just, honestly, it was the coolest thing for me to see and experience, like all of these different students using their gifts to be able to truly collaborate and make something really special.
I've got a question from Jeffrey Orthwine. Are there pathways to bring media literacy programs like Chicago Stories to more regions? Are you aware of anything like that? And no is an okay answer, Steve.
We are creating those, honestly. And so we actually here in LA took what we did and iterated for a local school to be able to do that. Also, we took it virtual, took it to Haiti. Right, in fact, it was an incredible story. We started our first session right before the massive earthquake, and the kids were so fired up. They were so excited. We're using interpreters, and then literally the earthquake happens. Their internet is completely gone, no electricity, anything. And the people there that were there with the orphans, they literally said they just want to come back and they want to do like week 2. Like that's all they cared about, was being able to kind of go through that, even during such a traumatic process. And we know that, right? Because this can be, cathartic, but also it's just part of wanting to be able to learn more and to be able to do it. It's so powerful. And so, yeah, we've extended it and continue to. There's a lot of hopes and dreams as we have going forward, but we also have to kind of distill this down into certain things. But every time you do this, every time I teach, I always learn things. And so that's the beauty of it. It's a very fluid process, but we have a structure and we have that in place. And I am all for figuring out how to best kind of customize that to that specific group. We did it also in St. Louis, a much more formalized approach. Don Goebel and I did for the last 2 years. And that was really, really interesting as we worked with the Cardinals, worked with like Mercy Healthcare, and kind of customized it to those students there. And they invited us to come down to their fantasy camp just the last couple of days, which was incredible, to be able to give these students real, relevant kind of professional experiences. So it really does depend on your outcomes, where you want to go, and then kind of working backwards, just like an edit, just like a story idea of how we can best, connect you.
One of the nice sidebars that happens is the kids start doing public speaking, whether that's getting up and talking, or at the end, we do a showcase where we include parents or community that want to come and watch their shows. You should see these kids stand and talk about these things that they feel in command of. And it's just such a nice sidebar. Instead of making their focus, you're going to speak about something you're not connected to or passionate about. Now they get a chance to share their experience and show their work. And there were kids that from the first day were shy and scared to say their name, that are on a stage at the end of the experience saying, yeah, here's continuity and what we learned, and these were our challenges. And
amazing.
It was amazing sidebar.
I want to ask a little bit about the actual process. And I got 2 parts here. So let me do part 1. You've got X number of kids, let's call it 6. You guys will, I'm sure, fix me on that if I'm wrong. How do you handle the 2-minute script? Is it a group think? Is it one particular idea? Do they vote? Tell us a little bit about that democracy.
Well, we had 30, so that was our number. And so those were the vast majority from 5th grade all the way through high school students. And then we had a good, I think it was 8 or 10 mentors. And so what we did for the 2-minute script, so this was, again, their 4th project, right? So they've already had a lot of reps. We divided them into 2 groups. But before that, we opened it up to everybody. And we said, you pitch your ideas. Same idea that Vince was talking about. This has to come from the students, right? And so we said, okay, we have a deadline, 48 hours, 72 hours. You have to write a short treatment and just give us your idea. Even if it's not fully developed, write a pitch. And then, you know what, we're going to evaluate what we can do, the doability of the project. And then we're going to kind of then move forward. Sorry, that was the final project I'm talking to, 5 to 7 minutes, but that's kind of that process.
That final project's okay to talk about because that gives us a real insight at 30 people. Do they start in smaller groups?
So 2 groups of 15 is what it was. And so they legitimately had set experience, right? So there was departments, there are roles taken by the college students, by the high school students. And again, I've done this with, all high school kids or middle school kids. And so you just come down to, you just ask them, hey, what did you feel like you connected with most? Where did you, what challenge do you want to take on? And it's amazing because the kids truly do step up because they know they're part of a team and everybody has different skill sets. And that is another one of the big takeaways is that, I don't have to be a master of all these things, right? I can really find a way to do audio and to really make a difference and to be a valuable part of the team. Yeah, I'm more introverted. It's such a cool way to kind of then think about the puzzle pieces. And of course, it's not always perfect, but it really worked well.
And then what happens is success in one area, they'll then give themselves permission to do maybe something a little different.
Yes.
Again, it sounds overwhelming. 30 seconds with the camera, great. Now we're going to talk about a frame. What's in a frame? What are you saying visually? Bringing in Patrick, a professional cinematographer, we would show him a push-in. How does that feel? What does it look like if I shoot someone from down below? And we'd let them explain. Now we put these characters in this setting and the camera's far away. What does it make you feel? We're talking about the feelings of the visuals. But that's all these exercises that they all had to do their own. They're getting feedback, they're moving on. So it was like wax on, wax off. As you had isolated these as separate exercises, when they came together for them to do their own 1 minute, 2 minute project. And how the execution would be is they did a 30-second story that they thought of. They thought of frames. We had them write dialogue, for some of the setups. So we had them in small ways already doing it, set up with small little baby steps of success. So as it expanded, it was the next logical leap for what they could handle. And, some had different variances of success, but they all were better at the end of whatever little project they did than when they started. And culture. Fail and fail quickly. There's more than one way to the waterfall. The more you do it, the easier it's going to get. And moving on. So we just didn't set up an environment where they were afraid. They weren't scared to show their stuff. It was okay. We would take good and bad from all experiences to learn from. And we were both big on lots of love and encouragement, really focus on the things that are good. As their skill sets improve and their self-esteem is higher, you can start to be raising the standards of the execution, not the person, slightly to say, it feels like when you did that frame, what would it feel like if you played within that to make that feel a little bit more seamless? Now, the setup, I love, you crushed that. This was great. The other smart thing we did was we would make something about just the 30-second story or just about continuity. We wouldn't purposely touch on audio. So there'd be bad audio because they weren't focused on it.
Yep.
And then I'd say, the things that this was about, which is continuity, all those shots are awesome. You crushed it, but we can't hear it. That's okay. We weren't working on hearing it. It was not the point of the piece. Now we're going to go to what is room tone? How are you going to do ADR? We would get them to the next thing they wanted to add to their puzzle. If it's everything at once,
it's overwhelming.
It's overwhelming.
Totally. I mean, I remember that from my film school experience, which, I'm jealous. I'm jealous of these kids at every level. There is something you do, Steve, that I've not seen or heard about from a lot of people. And I really would like you to talk a little bit about personal video reflections, because I think it's something you do that's a little more that not a lot of people are familiar with. I think it's an important self-guidance piece for the kids involved. Please tell us a little bit about it.
I appreciate it. It's something that I've kind of iterated and evolved over the last 10 years for a couple of reasons. Number one, just in an academic setting. So Lake Forest High School.
What is it first? Pardon me. What is it first?
What is it? Yeah, it's a personal reflection. It's a 2-minute video that kids talk about 3 big takeaways, what they did and what they learned. So they go through the process. I have a structure for them so that they can kind of read through and answer a bunch of different prompts, a bunch of different questions, just like what Vince talked about. It's really about giving constructive feedback. You go, hey, what were you thinking there? Or how did that work out? You're not going, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, and dressing them down, but you get them to be thinking actively. And for all the educators out there, it's really inquiry-based learning, right? So you're thinking about these different prompts. You're always giving them suggestions and thoughts, but you're not the one that's kind of hammering in on one specific thing. So really what it is a showcase in 2 minutes, because we just short form, it can really only remember 3 things as well as beginning, middle, and end. It works out incredibly well to be able to showcase what is going on from each student's perspective, using their own voice, to be able to do that.
Who sees that? Are they screening it for everybody, or is it just for the teachers?
So the final night that we talked about, the showcase, we showed 3 or 4. And the coolest part is all of them started from the same kind of position, right? With the structure, they were all completely different. And that happens every single time. I've done this 4,000 or 5,000 times, and there's literally no kid that has the same, reflection. And so what it is, again, from an educational perspective, it replaces what the tail that wags the dog, which is your standardized assessment. It is personalized. It's the opposite approach of that. And so initially 15 years ago, when I started this, athletes were getting recruited because they had tapes. I'm a coach. And so I said, why isn't that happening in academics? Like, why can't my students tell their story of all of these different experiences, the things they failed at, the things that they learned from that? That's what film schools want to see. That's what really, honestly, is what unlocks the acceptance rate of these 1% kind of film schools, is a kid honestly assessing what they did, what they learned, and be able to show growth. That's what you want, right? The colleges want to be able to take thoughtful, empathetic, really aware, self-aware students to be able to then take them to the next level.
Something really small in the OWC piece, in the summer stories piece, Vince, came from you about not necessarily being great at test taking in a form that I thought was very poignant. Can you reflect a little bit about that? I mean, is that I assume that's some of your own personal experience?
Yeah, for sure. I think sometimes we talk about this a lot because we're always investigating stuff, but sometimes challenges can lead you to great things. It's not that you don't need roadblocks. Everything should not be set up that you're a win no matter what you do. You want to have those challenges, but along with that, if you can have the encouragement and the opportunities to grow and learn and find things where you can be successful, that's important. So when I went into acting, as an example, what I recognized was there would be some theory at the front of the class. We would talk a little bit about sense memory, as an example, how to create a smell or a feeling that would affect us in the scene, or walking into a scene. You're never walking into a scene, you're coming from somewhere else. Did you come from getting a parking ticket? Was it an argument with a spouse? Did you just get fired? And now you're coming into that, and you're always going somewhere. So we would think about these things. Then we would be asked to do them, to work on them, and we'd have a scene to work on. And the part that was interesting was not only working on my own pieces of it, I had to then get up and do it. Now I had to perform it. That was the grade, right? I had to get up and I could feel the feedback. Where was I succeeding and failing? And it's like, you don't try to be better than anyone. You just try to be your best. You're going to have a different strengths and set of skills, so you're improving. But then watching others, the learning curve goes off the charts. Once I can watch 15 other people approach this with ideas I never thought of, now all of a sudden you're multiplying my learning experience. What's wrong with copying? Like, that worked. Well, how did they do that? And we're sharing. So we're really learning from each other. And then we reflected on it. What worked? What didn't work? What did you learn? What was your approach? And then it's the game within the game. What was your mindset leaving that night? What are you going to try next night? And so that felt like a great way to get better. I could never perform a scene from just taking tests and answering what would be the right approach. I'm going to have to go out and participate. So having a laboratory like an acting class, a safe place to go, although you bring a high standard, you want to, bring a quality, your best version of the performance, was a great experience. So as it applies to education specifically, I really think that being able to copy others, to get a chance to try your techniques and use them, which is what's so great about actually editing and doing stuff, by showing it to people and getting feedback. We can tell when audiences are liking it or where they're bored. It's when we make films, we always show them to people and just get feedback. Are you confused? You can sit in a room and tell when you're winning or losing an audience. So I just think that really is a great way of learning that is effective for whatever craft you're doing. And so it's, for me, someone who didn't flourish at the test taking side of all things and didn't feel like it translated for me, I gravitated, and it opened up a way for me to grow and realize that a lot of this education would become self-driven.
That's what I really picked up from that one little soundbite, is that maybe not everybody is always going to be the best at taking form-based education, that maybe other types of education have such power. And that's what I, as a educator at a different level, but similar to Steve, really, resonated with me. Although I'm decent with the test taking, I found this was much more dangerous for me and my sense of self. I want to cover a couple of the questions here from both of you. Just a sentence or two. What are the most important things that you're learning or that you've learned from participation in this class? Because I'm sure, Steve, it's both the same and different every time. And
it's rarely the same. No, there's always learning. But just to reiterate what Vince was saying about experiential learning, that's the beauty of it. That's the fun, right? You're a coach, you're a facilitator. You're not the sage on the stage, because once you think you're there, my goodness, they will undress you really, really quickly. And every educator who's ever been in front of the 30 kids knows that, right? Anybody who's been in the room and you can't control that, if you're trying to control it, you're done. And so it's always kind of a play. And honestly, the best part of this was to have another co-teacher with me that has the experience and literally walking them through all of this. Literally day 2, I remember him coming over, we're doing through shots. He starts directing the kids and I'm just like, this is amazing. So for me, a big part of it was like, so fun to be able to kind of release that and just to be able to learn myself. And that was a big thing that I took away. And that was the coolest thing in the world, because here I get to literally learn from a master teacher. And even a guy who, doesn't necessarily see himself as an educator. Now he should, because you truly are. And it is more of not only a mindset, but it's that empathy.
Well, I really was inspired by what Steve was doing. And I mean, that is why I jumped in. And what was fun was to have someone to bounce back and forth with. Mm-hmm. And what we really, our approaches were so similar. Like, I really don't believe there's one way to do anything, so with the kids, it was really about recognizing who needed a nudge in what direction. Like, some kids were just shy to shoot something. I had an experience with the school I'm helping out here. And I went to this girl, and the obvious thought was perhaps she's, lazy or not taking this seriously. And I went to the girl and I said, we haven't seen a project yet. She said, I'm really nervous to show something. And I said, oh, that's not a big deal. I go, come on, let's go shoot something. I'll be in it. So she said, okay. We went outside and there was other kids doing another class outside. I said, okay, so where do you want me to walk? You have to come up with it, but we're going to do the continuity thing. I'll go wherever you want. She said, could we shoot it somewhere else? I said, why? She said, because there's other kids around here. I said, we're film people. We don't care what anyone thinks about us. And she said, okay. And so then we shot it, then we showed it, and she got feedback. So it's that personal thing, right? That she just needed that permission to splash in the pool. How do we get her there? That's the joy. How do you get them to that place to give themselves the permission? And as we all know, sometimes the ones that are the most timid have the most to give. So now she's really on top of it and getting out there, and you're seeing that turnaround. And, that's what I keep learning is each child, whatever their reluctancy or things is, you don't always know what it is. And just connecting with them and believing in them and sharing space with them goes a long way to letting them do what they kind of want to do anyway.
It's so rewarding though, when you see that and to see the growth right away. It's amazing, right?
I'm gonna plug a little less powerful one, but it's powerful. Steve knows about this. Starting tomorrow, we open up our 15-second, it's really 15 to 60-second film festival, where we let people go ahead and enter for some prizes at the end. But Vince, Steve's heard me do this before, but the feeling is always, I want you to go out and fail, not go out and succeed. I want you to go out and take a chance and do something daring. And that's what they're going to hear from us tomorrow. And there are prizes we give away on Saturday. Steve, I'm going to probably throw a directory at you of films to look at, but I also will understand if you're crazy busy. Which brings me to a little bit of a tech question from the crowd. When do you bring Final Cut into this?
Great question. First day. And the reason why I love Final Cut is truly it has changed my whole entire classroom from 10 years ago or so, because a couple of reasons. Number one, it's visually intuitive. So literally we had 5th graders, his daughter did tons of stuff on iPad and she'd only done iMovie, literally got introduced to Final Cut. Oh, she was on. And that's the beauty of it, right? You go clips to iMovie, right into Final Cut, and it just works. And so we had 5th graders who were killing edits. And literally they're like, can I take this computer? I'm like, yes, that's why we have them. Like, thank you, Apple. Like, take it home, but please take care of it. MacBook Pros, and they'd come back with full edits. And it was the greatest thing in the world because they had not only agency, but also they had the motivation and they wanted to get stuff done. And so we get into it right away. And that's honestly the beauty of a magnetic timeline too, is they're used to it in iMovie, right? So then you can build the symbol. So our first 30-second edit, it was like, all right, shorten it up. Okay, that's easy, right? It's not 3 clicks. It's not a bunch of other stuff. And so then truly the creativity comes to the forefront. And that's why I love it. Again, 10 years ago, I would do like an opening project just to get kids kind of, again, experiencing editing rather than me up front teaching. And I was shocked. It was one of those things that something that would take 2 days of classwork took 40 minutes. And the best part of it is there were a lot of girls who just immediately got to it and they gravitated towards it and they were on it and they're rock stars. And they never saw themselves as editors and they never probably would say that, but we need more voices and need more students, just like you're talking about that introvert, right? They're not thinking, oh, I'm gonna edit, like what does that even mean? But you just give them some positive experiences. It's amazing how it all kind of comes together.
Those are just both wonderful pieces. How is Summer Stories different than teaching during the semester?
It's a lot more fun. I mean, it's truncated. So I take my whole entire curriculum and then we get to iterate. And so we're doing it for 5 hours. You can get so much more done in a concentrated space. The other piece of it, I have students throughout the day. I get them all in one space. And then that is where the magic happens. Because then you get kids who otherwise usually only can collaborate on the weekends. They're all there together. They can come out and then they can work because it's during the summer. They can work over, at night. And this happens in St. Louis. This happened in previous years as well, is literally kids from the city and the suburbs, they will find a way to connect and to be able to literally in person when we could pre-COVID, as well as during COVID, they were all down in Millennium Park shooting because they are so excited to create, to be able to connect as creators in the community. That's truly what it is, right? So they feel like, wow, I have value. My identity here as a creator, as a storyteller is being built and developed. And man, that's the cool part, right? You see these kids then just kind of shoulders back. Okay, the world's my oyster. And that's what's really cool. And Vince, by the way, is incredibly good at kind of building those kids up. And it's who he is. And it's really, really fun to see that authentic kind of teacher, but also just a really good dude. And who you've seen in the movies, that's like who he actually is. And that was what was cool for the kids to kind of see and then, experience as well.
What's the things that we were talking about with Film Geek, like you share a passion. So like kids are on a football team or a soccer team, but ours is film. And then they start talking like, oh, I saw a push-in shot and it made me feel, they'd come in the next day. And they'd be like, oh, they shot that wide and I felt lonely. I was like, oh, did you? So they started learning a language, like they got into a secret universe and we all love this stuff. So all of us, right? It's a connective. So they, from the city of Chicago to the suburbs, they were sharing a language and a journey of excitement. They had a passion between them.
It was awesome. During lunch, literally, they were like discussing all these different heroes' journey stories. And they were like, well, what about this one? And it was awesome. It was the coolest, like, it wasn't even a nerd out because it was all just kids listening and going, okay, yeah, I do see Wizard of Oz and Home Alone. And I do see how, all of these movies have these familiar kind of story arcs and it starts to connect and they start thinking more critically. And again, it's a natural thing, but also essential skill for the 21st century.
And we would connect it to their own life. Yes. Most of them had attempted to ride a bike, and that really is the hero's journey. There's a setup, you want to ride the bike. There's a calling, you refuse it, you're afraid you're going to get hurt, but somehow you're forced, you find yourself in it. What is your greatest fear? What if I fall? So it's hard, there's struggles, you're trying to ride, you're balanced, you're this, inevitably you fall. There's the death of the hero. He's not, or she's not the innocent anymore. But they come up, they've tasted death, they're reborn, they recommitted to their task and they face their final conflict. And in the end, they're the master of the bike. They can ride no hands, not that you would encourage it, but they could as they master it. And I say that thing you went through with the bike, that's going into 5th grade, that's going into high school, that's going into college, that's going into your adult life. That journey's going to repeat itself. Start to recognize where you're at. You're new, you're afraid. That thing will happen you're afraid of. And by the time you figured it out, you're going to have to start all over with something new. And as we would connect stories and movies and these things with their own life, and they could start to see where it came from, the conversations were just so fun.
That's just so powerful, guys. I promised my friend Steve that I would get you out with 5 minutes to the hour, which means I got 2 minutes, and I hit my marks. That's one of my pieces of pride. I think this is an important question, and just give a short answer in there because there's 2 parts to it. But number one, what advice would you give to a parent or an educator who would like to integrate something like this into their local school? Fight over it, guys.
Go ahead. I would say get started and share with us, and we'll share with you. And no one's going to do a program and not come back with something super cool that we're going to want to do. So there's no right answer. We change. The kids will be working on a project, and then we'd be in the back going, that seemed like a good idea, but they're kind of going this way. So it's just always evolving. The main thing is get the camera, get the ability, the final cut to be able to edit, start to get out there and explore, and just sort of build it and see where it goes, you know? Just get started and have some fun.
Particularly when we talk about lower income kids, because some of this equipment isn't always the cheapest thing in the world. Do you have any thoughts there?
Yes. No matter where I've been around the world these days, kids will have a camera in their pocket. And that's just one of those things. And so if you've got a camera in your pocket, you can start to create, and then you can then add on and build and build and build and build and build. Yeah, again, it's amazing. And I don't think that's ever going to change. And because Apple has created the best device, there's no doubt about it, to be able to do this, not only shooting and editing within an iPhone, kids have these in their pocket.
That's a strong answer. I always say it almost doesn't matter the platform. They will find ways to tell stories.
You got it.
I'm almost at time.
They're already doing it. TikTok, all these things, they're just doing it really poorly. And so you can build on that experience and be able to constructively give them feedback. And then you can build from there too.
Okay, gentlemen, I've answered as many of the questions, or I've fed as many of the questions as I dare to. I want to give you both a last chance, a summary statement before we go, please.
Well, I'm so glad we had this opportunity, because clearly you could tell just how much fun we had, and we hope to do this going forward. And just like Ben said, hit me up. Let me know if you want to do this, what the parameters are, what you're interested in, and let's help make it happen.
Yeah, me too. So much fun. Look forward to keep doing it. And Jeff, thank you to you guys and to Apple for being such a great facilitator of making this so much fun. And can't thank you enough for all the participation and help that you guys gave us. So thank you.
I'm just a guy in the middle, man. OWC, our sponsor, Future Media Conferences, they're the people who put this together, and this stuff wouldn't happen without them. And of course, Apple computers. Gentlemen, I'm going to let you go. I'm so sorry for those of you whose questions I didn't get in there. They had a hard out, and I'm at exactly.
One more thing, though. One more thing.
Yes, sir.
We are going to continue this conversation on Saturday as well. So we have a session.
That's right, about feedback. And so please join us. It's the last session of the conference. But I want to let you guys go because I know you have an alumni group to meet up with. We value your time. Thank you so much for joining us. Could everybody